Using SAP BW reporting functions, you can evaluate a data set from an info provider according to various characteristics and key figures. To do this, you define a query for your chosen info provider in BEX Query Designer. The figure provides an overview of the functions that are available in the Query Designer toolbar. Toolbar functions are context sensitive. Functions are only active when they are valid for your context. For example, the save icon only becomes active when there is something to save. You can also access functions via menus, where you will notice the function icon appearing next to the menu option.
The table provides an explanation of the functions available as icons in the Query Designer toolbar. When creating a new query, open BEX Query Designer and choose the new query icon from the toolbar. On the left-hand side of the new query, select Info Provider screen. Choose one of the following three options. The following are the sections of BEX Query Designer in Filter View as shown in the figure. Info Provider. When you have selected an info provider for your query, all available objects such as dimensions, key figures, structures, and filters display on the left-hand side of the Query Designer in the Info Provider section. Characteristic Restrictions displays the characteristic filter values that are being applied to the entire result set. Default Values displays the characteristic filter values that are being used for the initial view of the result set. You may choose to modify these filters in the result. Properties. Settings relevant to a selected query object are displayed in the Properties section on the right-hand side of the Query Designer. Messages. Informational messages, warnings, or error messages are displayed in the Messages section in the lower part of the Query Designer.
The following are the sections of BEX Query Designer in rows/columns view as shown in the figure. Free characteristics. Place characteristics that you want to be available for a user in this section. Free characteristics do not appear in the initial view of a query result set. The user navigates in analysis to make use of free characteristics. Columns. Place query objects such as key figures or characteristics in this section so that they appear in report columns when you execute the query. Rows. Place query objects such as key figures or characteristics in this section so that they appear in report rows when you execute the query. Preview. You can see a preview of what the layout of the result set will look like when you execute the query. Tasks. View a list of tasks relating to a selected query object and choose any of the tasks in the list to go directly to the corresponding settings. Messages/where used. When you choose the Where Used icon from the Query Designer toolbar, the Messages section in the lower part of the screen changes to Where Used. The Where Used section provides information about where a query object is being used.
You can perform the following activities when working with query objects.
To save a query, Choose the Save Query icon from the Query Designer toolbar or choose Query, Save As from the Query Designer menu.
To find a query for which you already know a part of the description or other information, choose the Find option on the Open Query. Select Query screen. Enter the description or the technical name of the query in the empty field and choose Find. You can select Search in Description or Search in Technical Name to restrict the search to these results. The query definition shows in the Search Results field. Select the query and choose Open to open the query in BEX Query Designer. By restricting characteristics to specific values in your reports, you can filter the data that is displayed. For example, you are interested in the results of a specific sales team, but the info provider contains results for all sales teams. If you restrict the query with a filter on the required characteristic, the report displays the results for the specific sales team only. You can define these filters in the Query Designer filter view, either in the Characteristic Restrictions section or in the Default Values section. Filters set in the Characteristic Restrictions section are static filters. They are always applied to the query result and cannot be modified by the user in the result. Filters set in the Default Value section are dynamic filters. They are applied immediately when the query is executed. The user is able to navigate and filter freely, but only within the range of the static filters. There are three ways to restrict a characteristic in the query definition. Select a characteristic value from the Info Provider section. Open the characteristic node to reveal the subfolders. One of these folders is called Characteristic Values. Open the Characteristic Values folder to display the values and drag the values to the required section of the Query Designer. When dragging the first characteristic value to the required section, the characteristic is also dragged automatically with it. In the Characteristic Restrictions section or in the Default Values section, open the context menu for the characteristic and choose Restrict. Double-click the characteristic to launch the default task, which is Restrict for a characteristic in Filter View. The figure shows the selection screen for the characteristic material.
On the Select Value For screen, use the Show drop-down list to select how you would like filter values to be presented to you. The table presents the list of options available in the Show drop-down list. When you select your values and move them to the chosen selections pane on the right-hand side of the Select Values For screen, you have the options that are outlined in the following table.
If you create a complex filter with several characteristics for a query, or if you think you will use the same filter frequently, you can save the filter as a reusable object. In Filter View, right-click in either the Characteristic Restriction section or in the Default Value section to open the context menu and choose Save As Reusable Filter. The context menu is shown in the figure.
When you save a reusable filter, you can see the filter objects in the Info Provider section on the left-hand side of the Query Designer under the Filter folder. The figure shows the filter folder. Filter objects can be used for other queries based on the same info provider.
Changes made to a reusable filter in one query affect all queries in which the same reusable filter is used.
Query properties are settings that affect the presentation and behavior of a query. You can access query properties in the Properties pane on the right-hand side of BEX Query Designer, or you can choose the Query Properties icon in the Query Designer toolbar. Query properties are organized by tabs as shown in the figure. The General Query Properties tab shows general information about a query, such as its owner and when it was last changed. By changing the sequence of variables, you ensure that they are presented to the user in a logical order.
You can configure the presentation of properties in the Display tab. You can change the display of results using the Rows/Columns tab. You can choose how to present values in the Value Display tab.
In the Planning tab, select or deselect Startup View to determine whether the query is started in Display mode or in Planning mode. Planning mode allows the result cells to be changed.
The Extended tab contains advanced options for query usage.